The Miami Hurricanes game is the most important in-state game for the Florida Gators in 2024.
You are Locked On Gators, your daily podcast on the Florida Gators. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome back to another episode of Locked On Gators, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thanks for making Locked On Gators your first listen of the day. We are available daily and free reviews in the podcast and on YouTube. Happy Tuesday. I am Brandon Olsen. Find me on Twitter at WNS_Brandon. Find all my written work with Giants Country and NFL 33. Today's episode of Locked On Gators is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. As playoffs wind down, sports stop sporting like we want them to, but this summer, FanDuel is taking up all customers with a boost or a bonus daily. That's right. There's something for everyone every day, all summer long. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. And like I said, for Florida and Miami, or for Florida, I think the Miami game is the most important in-state game. Because right now, Florida has a very unique opportunity that I honestly don't know if it's ever even happened before, where they have the chance to beat all three of the other Power 4 universities in the state of Florida. And I don't know if anybody's ever had that chance, because UCF just now Power 4, but even prior to that, I can't think of a time where teams really played all of them in 1 year. Not common. You know, Florida plays Florida State every year. Florida State plays Miami and Florida every year, but UCF now is in the mix here. And UCF, by the way, is a bigger program than I think people want to recognize. I understand it's going to take a while because a lot of us Florida Gators fans look at them as kind of like the little cousin, not even little brother here. But they're a Power 4 university with Power 4 funding in what has a lot of promise as a conference in the Big 12. Not to mention, really fun-looking offense. Good alumni base, gives you an NIL there. But so I'm just saying, UCF is coming up, but the Florida and Miami game, the most important still. Public perception-wise, right now, Florida is thought of as, oh, the place is practically burning down. And everyone looks at Miami as if they're building the Taj Mahal over here. Like they're just looked at so separately in terms of what the public perception is. Right. And my point has always been, I think talent-wise, these teams are in really similar boats. I do. I think they are. And by that, I don't necessarily mean that right now they're right. I just mean in the sense of last year we saw what they were. And both teams we looked at and we went, hey, they're really young. Like they're doing some bad things, but like they're really young. Next year will be at least a little bit different, right? At least a little bit. And now this is next year. This is where they've been experienced. And I think that for both sides, I think there's a lot of question marks as far as what they really are and what they're really going to be this season. I think that a lot of us look at these guys, like I do it too with Florida players, and I know that a lot of Miami fans do it with Miami players, and a lot of other Florida Gators fans do it with Florida players, where they go, oh, like Jordan Castell played a lot as a true freshman, freshman All-American. He should be amazing this year. Realistically, that's not how expectations work. If just, oh, they played a lot and played pretty decently for a true freshman, they're going to be amazing this year. Francis Mauigoa, for example, I feel like last year he wasn't good. He was good for a freshman, but that doesn't really matter because you still need to develop. It's not just like a linear thing where it's like, oh, well, you were good as a freshman, which means you're going to be this much better as a sophomore and this much better. You still got to develop. You know, it's still something you have to do. It's not guaranteed. So I think that's how a lot of Florida Gators fans and Miami Hurricanes fans feel about their rosters right now. It's just, oh, like Miami feels a bit better because they just brought in the flashy quarterback from the portal, a big running back from the portal. They brought in Sam Brown. They brought in a whole bunch of defensive players. But I think that when you look at this battle for Florida, it's the most important because right now you're thought of nationally as lesser than Miami. I disagree, but I think right now nationally you're looked at as lesser than Miami. And so I think for Florida, you win that and that's huge for you. You automatically add a ton of just weight to your name right now. Like Billy Napier too. Like Billy Napier beats Mario. That's going to matter. Like people are going to care about that a lot. Whether or not you agree or disagree, people are going to care. And then you talk about the recruiting aspect. Florida and Miami, I feel like, have gone at it for recruits more than Florida and any other school, or more than any one school and any other school. I feel like every player we talk about and we go, yeah, Florida's in on them. Then you also hear Miami's in on them. Even if he commits to Florida, it's like, oh, well, Miami's not going to stop pushing, just so you know. And then if a kid, Miami's heavily recruiting a kid, Miami lands a commit, you hear, hey, there's a pretty good chance that Florida's going to be calling that kid. Like they're constantly going at it with battles. And you can constantly say, oh, well, Mario won 7 games in year 2 and Billy won 5. And it's like, okay, that's fine. But guess what? These kids don't sign until December. So you can say, oh, Mario won 7 games in year 2 and Billy won 5. That's cool. But it doesn't matter what they did in year 2 if we go into year 3 for both coaches and one of them beats the other. It doesn't matter. If Billy beats Mario, he's going to go, oh, yeah, congratulations. He won 7 games in the ACC, and I beat him. And if Mario beats Billy, he's going to go, hey, look, see, we told you. We told you they were frauds. We told you they weren't good. We told you they're not cut out for this. It's wildly important for recruiting for Florida and Miami. They've gone at it more than anybody else. It's huge. It cannot be overstated. Like Florida, Miami going at it constantly recruiting. Florida, Miami playing this year and next. There's a lot on the line for both teams, really. Again, I think public perception-wise, Florida's looked at as lesser than. And we'll talk about that later this week. We're going to talk about just the actual implications from the game. But it's something that I do think that a lot of Florida Gators fans know, right? Miami game is arguably the most important game on the entire schedule. Definitely the most important in-state game. I think we're going to stay in the ACC for the second most important game. We'll talk about that next on Locked On Gators. I love sports, and I love them so much that I never want them to stop as playoffs wind down and football comes back. We get fewer games, but some Sundays are going to be pretty exciting now. Sports just aren't sporting like we want them to, but FanDuel lets me keep the sports going whenever I want. Olympic betting's been awesome. All I have to do is open the app, dream up any bets anytime that I'm in the mood. And this summer, FanDuel's hooking up all customers with a boost or a bonus daily. So that's right, there's something for everyone every day, all summer long. So head over to FanDuel.com and start making the most out of your summer. And remember that FanDuel is an official sports betting partner of Major League Baseball. Thanks for making Locked On Gators your first listen of the day. Every day we are available daily and free wherever it's in the podcast. I'm pretty sure you can't hear it, but there's someone, I don't know where they're drilling to, but it sounds like they're drilling to somewhere right outside my window. But just saying, it's driving me absolutely nuts right now. But Florida and Florida State take each other on later this year, as always. And I think that this is more important than the UCF game for Florida. Again, talking about recruiting wins. Talk about recruiting battles. I feel like Florida and Florida State have really gotten into it more as Florida State has attempted to pick up their high school recruiting. One of the biggest criticisms of Mike Norvell since he's gotten to Florida State has been his high school recruiting has been lackluster, has knocked it out of the park in the portal, but his high school recruiting has been lackluster. And it feels like for the 2025 class too, you've heard a lot of Florida State going at it for kids, Florida State, Miami going at it for kids. Florida State has entered the discussion of recruiting for high school. That's not accidental, okay? That's Florida State, while doing really good in the portal. Again, they've been one of the best portal recruiting teams since Mike Norvell got there. They've done really well in the portal. Now they are trying to do really well in the high school ranks. And I think part of that was that 63-3 loss to Georgia. This isn't a troll or anything like that, but I think you look at like the opt-outs and you kind of saw what Florida State had depth-wise. And it's like, wow, we were really top-heavy. Because once we had some injuries spring up there, or once we had guys opt out, luckily we didn't have injuries spring up. Once we had guys opt out, we got smoked. I think that kind of opened their eyes a bit for recruiting. And also, I think that Mike Norvell can say, hey, like I've got job stability now. That was the thing, because up until like the past 2 years, Mike Norvell, after his first 2 years at Florida State, it was like, well, I don't know if Mike Norvell is going to work out. He had quite a few negatives, right? And so it was like, I don't know if he's going to work out. Now he's got that. And now he gets to promise that to high school kids. He's like, look, I'm not going to get fired even if we have a bad year. I'm locked in. They just extended me. And so he can really hammer recruiting, which is why I think it's really important for Florida to beat Florida State. And I do. And I understand Florida's not going to be favored in that game. Florida's not going to be favored in the Florida State game, in the Miami game. They're only going to be favored in the UCF game in state. That's it. But for Florida, you got to show up there and win that game. You do, because also Billy Napier, 0-2 versus Mike Norvell with Florida State. The first time came down to Anthony Richardson Hail Mary, threw it through the back of the end zone into, I think, the 15th row. It was wild, which, again, I think was because in the Tennessee game, he underthrew the Hail Mary. And so he was like, I'm never doing that again. And so he just overthrew it like crazy. So there's that. But I also think that you look at last year's game and Florida was up. Florida had the stupid play. Florida coaching failed them. That's been a game where I've said I think Florida's coaching failed them as Florida State. And for me, that's one of the reasons that it's also really important for Florida to win this game. Because I think Florida's coaching in that Florida State game was horrible offensively. The play calling was horrible, just no confidence in Max Brown. None. It was ridiculous. Max Brown made a few good throws. He had that wheel to Hayden up the sideline. He had some plays against Missouri too. He came in out of nowhere, stepped in, and started making plays with his legs, with his arm. Like, he was doing things. And in the Florida State game, they were just like, you know what? You don't get that opportunity. And it's kind of wild. So I think for Florida, you look at the recruiting wins, but also you look at the head-to-head record for Florida and Florida State, and it's not good. I don't want you to start 0-3 against Mike Norvell as Billy Napier. Come on now. That's embarrassing, right? Who wants that? But again, the recruiting wins, like in the trenches, I feel like we've seen on offensive line, I feel like we've seen quite a few Florida State battles. I mean, Rod Kearney was at one point a Florida State commit, ended up flipping to Florida. Lucas Simmons was another one where Florida was recruiting him heavily. That's been a pretty common thing at this point where Florida is constantly, at this point, trying to flip some guys that Florida State has. Florida State is finally getting more involved with guys. Solomon Thomas is another one. Javian Hilson is another one. Florida State has Peyton Joseph, who used to be committed to Florida, but that was like a really weird situation. Tramel Jones. You look at on Florida side of things with a smaller recruiting class, at least for the time being. Florida State was in on Joshua Moore. They're still recruiting Jalen Wiggins. These teams are constantly going to go at it, right? And I think we all know that. And I think that these head-to-heads are more important than ever now that you're supposed to be established. You know, you could sell the future in year 1 and year 2. But now it's year 3, and people kind of know, hey, your back's up against the wall. You need to sell the present, and you need to show your resume of what you've done. And this game's right next to signing day. It's what? A month, less than a month. It's 3 weeks before signing day. This is the time where, like, you win that game. It's your last regular season game of the year, where even if you've got barely bowl eligible there, that's going to be a huge selling point for your team. They're going to go, hey, look what we did. Recruiting-wise, hey, look what we did 3 weeks ago. Especially if you beat Miami and then beat Florida State. You go, look what we did at the beginning of the season, look what we did at the end of the season. You want to come to the flagship? You want to come to the best program in the state? You come right here. And I think it's hugely important for that, for Billy Napier to establish yourself there. And, I mean, there have been times where, you know, I've been critical of Billy Napier, the Florida State game, like I said last year, bad coaching. But this is one of those times where you've got to show up. And if you can show up and win, especially in Tallahassee, you're about to get a lot of clout on the trail. You are. Like Javian Hilson, Solomon Thomas, like I said, they're committed to Florida State. Tramel Jones committed to Florida State. Florida's not backing off. I don't care if people say they locked down, whatever. Florida's not backing off. Getting in there again, huge. Huge. Last game that we do have to talk about is the UCF game, which I know a lot of people will overlook. Don't. It's really important. We'll talk about that next on Locked On Gators. Passion, drive, and patience. That's the formula for winning championships, and it's also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance with superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has you covered with over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die. You'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your parts guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back, because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber and not cash for the parts you need, the prices you want. It's easy to make your car the MVP and bring home huge wins. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply, and eBay Guaranteed Fit is only available to U.S. customers. Thanks for making Locked On Gators your first listen of the day. Every day, we are available daily and free wherever it's the podcast and on YouTube. To wrap up today's show, I am going to beat the crap out of whoever is drilling out there. It's ridiculous. I can't get over it. But Florida plays UCF this year, first time since 2021 when UCF beat Florida in the bowl game. Miserable, horrible showing by Florida in that one. It was. I remember watching that game, just going, "Oh, this is like ugly football. Like it's not fun. It's not. That's it." And like I said earlier, like Florida fans look at UCF as little cousin. Like they don't even go, "Oh yeah, like little brother." They little brother Miami. They try to little brother Florida State and Miami. They don't try to little brother UCF. Like they're like, "Oh, UCF is so irrelevant that we don't even need to little brother them. That they're just there, right? They just hang out." Can't lose to that team. And I do think it's important to go. And I've said this before. I said it earlier today. I will say it forever. UCF is a bigger deal than I think a lot of Florida Gators fans want to accept. Okay? I'm not saying they're a powerhouse program. I'm not saying they're going to go undefeated. I'm not saying anything about how great they are. I am saying that when they went undefeated, almost a decade ago at this point, and they were like, "Oh, we're the national champs. We're this, we're that." First off, you're idiots. Second off, no one respected you because it's like, yeah, you went undefeated at the group of 5 level. And teams nationwide are not going to respect that. I went to a G5 school. I respect the G5. I respect G5 football. I respect G5, the level. However, nationally, you are not going to get that respect just because you played really well and dominated the group of 5 level. Because so many people are going to go, okay, if you had to play a power 5 at the time, schedule power 4 now, you get walloped. You're not doing it week in, week out against elite competition. You're doing it against lesser competition. It's less impressive. It makes sense. However, now they are a power 4 program. When your biggest knock against them was they're the group of 5, like they're in a group of 5 program. They're not at a power university or a power program. They're not at a power conference. They're not this. They're not that. That's gone. I understand that some people are always going to look down at UCF like that. And I'm not saying to not look down on UCF. I don't care about UCF, okay? But I am saying that in terms of the landscape of the state, I think we should get rid of the big 3 look, which I'm not saying to really call it the big 3. Get rid. I'm not saying that, but I think you do have to look at it as really more of a big 4 now. And Florida UCF, they're going to be going at it for a lot of kids. They are. They've been going at it for a lot of kids. They're going to continue doing that at the Power 4 level. Simple as that. Like they're going to go at it for kids recruiting wise because now they both need to recruit Power 4 football players. Simple as that. They both need that talent. Florida needs better talent in the SEC, but both programs need Power 4 talent. That's going to matter for kids. Okay? That's going to matter for recruiting. Same. And also, going up against Gus. Gus Malzahn, one of the best offensive minds on the planet. I think he's amazing at what he does. I do think that he does a very good job there. And I think what he's done at UCF so far has been very impressive. He's going to put up points. And Billy Napier as an offensive play caller, as head coach, at least for the time being, and I say that only because we don't know what things will change from now to then. But Billy Napier as an offensive play caller, you can't go or host even a team in state that is nationally thought of as lesser than you. You can't go and lose that game. I'm sorry. As an offensive play caller, I get Gus is a very good offensive play caller, very good schemer. He's one of the best spread option minds out there. Okay? However, as Billy Napier, as an offensive play calling head coach, you can't go and lose to Gus Malzahn. They are thought of as worse than you. I think that they're better than a lot of people give them credit for, but they're thought of as worse than you. As an offensive play calling head coach facing an offensive, like, you can't lose that. You can't, because you might have to go shot for shot with him. And guess what? You're going to have to go shot for shot with him. It's as simple as that. When Florida plays Ole Miss, we're going to talk about that, right? Like, we're going to talk about, oh, yeah, like, offensive play caller. You're going to go head to head. How are you going to win? How are you going to keep up? Because these guys are good offensively. They're going to put up points. How are you going to keep pace with them? And for Billy, like, you got to do that. UCF is an important time to do that. Defensively, I think that you can look at a lot of players on the Florida Gators defense, namely number 14, Jordan Castell. I think you're going to look at a lot of them. And that UCF game, if they don't come out firing, that's crazy to me. You've got to come out just hair on fire, balls to the wall, whatever you want to say. Defensively, you've got to come out with some crazy energy, because you know who you're facing when you face UCF? KJ Jefferson. You know who almost single-handedly beat you last year in the swamp with a 2-7 Arkansas team? KJ Jefferson. You got to go in there and put the beats on them. Simple as that. Like, you got to just come in and go, all right, clean them up, and do it. Like Jordan Castell, there were multiple plays where he just ran into KJ, and KJ's just like, all right, freshman, don't care, and just plowed through. Year 2, got to change. Now you get another shot at him. You got to take that shot, and you better hit that shot, because you got him this year in your home field. Got to win that. Got to. Just have to. Especially because you don't play UCF again until 2030. That's a long time to go, yeah, you know what happened last time we played? We beat them. You got to do it. It's an important game for recruiting. It's an important game in state. It really is. And I know it's the least important of the 3. It's still really important. Thanks for making Locked On Gators your first listen of the day. Every day we are available daily and free with us in the podcast and on YouTube. We will be back tomorrow. Talk more Florida Gators football for Locked On Gators. I'm Brandon Olsen. Don't forget to follow me on Twitter at WNS_Brandon. Find all my written work with Giants, Country, and NFL 33, and I'll see you all next time.